People just don't know about Western Australia. We really hold the country, and that's why there is so much angst about GST and royalties. Great-grandfather was trying to have WA secede from the rest of Australia. So I tease people a lot these days saying that we should secede from the rest of Australia. We have very dangerous countries around us. We are like a sitting duck in the middle of a lot of countries that could fire up, and we have always relied on America to save us.
How do we solve the problem on the housing side of it, the increasing the affordability of housing, whether it's to buy a house or to afford rental?
It's a tough one, and it's a tough one for any political party to. You cannot solve it. You didn't have the builders to build the houses. You didn't have enough people there, and then the backlog of building got worse and worse, and the boom of building became extreme.
Evolution should be normalized. Changing opinion should be normalized. I should not stand by one decision of mine and, oh no, I will die on that hill.
That goes for many things in life. Domestic violence, violence to women, politics, everything. You have to take it all the way back to education at a very young age. Let's have a think about national security and making people do national service for a year or so. Teachers, they really should be the top earners of our country if you want your youth to become great people, good people, solid people.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Juliana. How are you?
I'm very well, Devinder. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. And thank you for coming over and for this time. You have a very, growing up, you have seen many continents and geographies. Can you tell that story, the story of the Genesis?
The Genesis of Juliana.
Yes, please take me there.
Dad, he was one of our first very brilliant oil and gas geologists. So he comes from Muckenbudden in Western Australia and went to Northam High School. And I think he wanted to do medicine, but he was the third child of 7, and the 2 older brothers got to do the other degrees. And in those days, medicine, you would have to go to Melbourne, and I think only one of the older brothers was allowed to do that. And so he did geology here and did brilliantly. So oil and gas and overseas. Quite early, he met my mother here, and within 3 months took her off to Tripoli, Libya. They had their honeymoon in Rome, and it was the Olympic Games. So they were a week there and then straight to the Mediterranean. And I was born in a little house with a midwife. My older brother born first, and then I in 1964. And came back on my first birthday. So I tell many people I'm a boat person as well, because I came to Australia on a boat, the Guillermo, obviously not cattle class. And yeah, from there onwards, we were here for a little bit and then to Indonesia. So it was Caltex there, and all of the companies Dad was with is a derivation of Chevron. So Caltex was fabulous growing up for me. Rumbai was an American-built village, and we had the huge swimming pool. Mum and Dad were at the golf club. Mum taught everyone how to swim. Consequently, we were swimming when we were practically born, and was there for 4.5 years. Great schooling. I'll never forget, I had a kindergarten teacher who taught us, Julie Utomo was her name, and she taught us, well, I lapped it up, maths and writing and spelling and everything. And the American teachers pulled her in one day and said, this is wrong. You're teaching the children too much too soon. That's not our curriculum. And she was told to stop. But I obviously got her, and I would go around to her house on a Sunday for afternoon tea. It was brilliant. So yeah, back here when I was about 8, and that was local primary schools, and then I went to a private school for high school, and then UWA University. And sadly, I started law school in 1984.
Yeah.
And Mum and Dad got their next transfer. And all I wanted the whole time I was here in Perth was to be away overseas again. And I did French and Italian at school and the history of everything. And I just thought Perth was too small. And so they get the transfer to London in August 84. And I was first year law school. University was free then. So I couldn't go with them to London. My younger brother was in year 11 and a December baby for the year of schooling. Then it was that sort of calendar year. So he got to go to London and do A-levels at an international school called Mill Hill, and he became such an international person. And I stayed here and did law. But hey, Chevron flew me there twice a year because I was still a dependent, and they flew Mum and Dad home once a year. So Dad chose it that way, not to be on the American dollar, but to be on the Australian dollar and the different taxes, and to be able to have the house and the schooling and the flights.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow. And where do I start? There's just so many things to go from here. Can you talk about your interest? One is the legal side of it. We will come to that. But what was the inclination to learn languages, and what was your reasoning, or what was your plan when you wanted to learn languages?
I think my family life was very educational. And Mum and Dad had been overseas with so many people. Dad was, he probably had a photographic memory, and the literature that we had around the house was huge. And he did French probably only at primary school, but he could still remember so much. I could converse with him in French. Mum was a nurse and obviously stopped nursing to fly and marry my husband, and her husband, my dad, fly to overseas. So she didn't nurse again until later in life. But she was a very intelligent, common sense woman, and she was able to provide so much of that other side, not the pure academic. And if she had been given the chance to continue on at school here in Perth, she would have probably done incredibly well in that professional lifestyle. But the girls weren't allowed to really in those days. So she had to go off nursing at year 10. So look, I was an avid reader. I would be reading late at night in bed with a little light on, and supposed to be sleeping, but was reading far more than a lot of the children these days, very early on. So big things, Dad had all the encyclopedias. I'd be reading Dante Alighieri. I'd be reading things from around the world of all different races. And because we grew up beautifully with the Indonesians working for us. In our house, we probably had 4 people, and Mum and Dad treated them so beautifully. We grew up with their kids. The family had their little house over the garage from us, which was not a carport, but it was quite a little house. So Mum learnt all their cooking. We played with the children. We had a gardener and so on. And we were taught, Dad it comes from a very Western Australian family of 7. I'd say a few of his brothers were quite racist. But he brought us up to be able to walk with all peoples, kings and queens and peasants and whatever race. So I've always been a very open person, which I think has helped me in the business I ended up being in, and being able to interview people and help them in their career as much as I could for overseas work as well. I mean, obviously mainly Australia, but for the overseas work as well.
Wow. Coming from there, after you get through the law school, and as you chose your career in the legal profession, and in many ways you are connected as, doing that work. Do you want to share that journey from a career point of view and a bit of your family, your own family?
Yeah, into law. Law was a struggle. It is not what you think it is. If you never had at your school any legal studies, you just hit the deck running. In our days, to do law, you had to do a year of something at university before anything. At UWA was the only law school. And that was a ridiculous way of introducing people to law. Obviously, that if they seriously wanted to do just law, they did whatever they loved for that first year. For me, I started down the science path thinking I would be a geologist, and with my colour of my skin, that was never going to work. And I dropped out and then chose the arts, Englishes, a couple of English literatures, modern history, which was China and Japan, and ancient history, to get into law. Because that was the second year of being at university, I then had to go in a category that only took 8 people. And I got in because my languages got me all the high marks, the A pluses and the B pluses and so on. And then law, it was such a struggle for me in that first year. In those days, 84, you had to do 4 units for 2 years, 4 units. The sturdy units, and they were 100% exams. So there was no internal essays, no assessment throughout. There were people that came to exams at the end of the year that you never saw at law school at all. Anyway, the parents and my young brother left in August 84, and our exams were in November. And I was very close family people, and it traumatized me. So I failed 2 units only just. Silly mistakes. And in those days, if you failed 2 units of the 4, you had to do all 4
again
as a supplementary exam in January. And I'd flown to London, so excited to see them in their first house for the first time, and had to fly back and stay with Grandma in a heat wave in January and sit the 4 units. So, yeah, that was the start of law school, which was quite a shock because I was quite a perfectionist like my dad, and to have that happen, it was humiliating. But I got through and ended up at a law firm that was a very good law firm. It's still just a West Australian firm, Jackson McDonald, and it has held off being gobbled up by many of the international firms. And it was a great firm to start at, even though there was only one female partner, and it was quite a boys' school in those days. And we got through that. I ended up in asbestos. We acted for the company CSR. So that's defendant insurance, and it's basically workers' compensation, but of that higher level. A great case in the end to be on, to learn the huge insurance style of litigation where you've got 7 or so defendants. We paid out all of the mesothelioma claims, which was Whitnum Gorge mining. And then your big long case was all about lung cancer. So did you have lung cancer from a fibre of asbestos, or was it from smoking cigarettes? Had the defendants doing acting for the tobacco companies, the government, so the knowledge of the medical community around the world and who knew what. So it was great. But after a while, people that I met in the eastern states would say, "Oh, you're a dust solicitor. Dust solicitors end up on the shelf." So yeah, I left eventually because it just was, I'm more a people's person, and to be on that defendant side was really tough, especially when you'd be sent out to interview old fellows who were dying of mesothelioma. And, you take everything down verbatim. And in those days, you would come back to your law firm and give your dictaphone tape to your WPO, your word processing operator, and have it all written out, and you check it. You send it back to them for them to sign, and they abuse the hell out of you and say that you're a liar. And it was really hard. With no mentoring in those days from any women in the firm. So, yeah, I may have had a different path if there had been probably more mentors like me. I wish I was around the way I mentor and guide the young girls, especially these days.
Could you talk, and as you said, back in the days, from a legal point of view, in that space, it's more male-dominated space. And how had your journey on the self-discovery without mentors? And you said that there was not too much of guidance. How has that? What were the hitting the brick wall moments for you, and how have you got through that journey?
I suppose it goes back even further, being a girl in various environments, overseas, wherever I grew up. I tended to be the only girl in the group of boys. So I could kick a football. You weren't allowed to play football in those days. I could play cricket. Being good swimmers, my older brother became a great surfer. But girls weren't allowed to surf in those days. So, we body surfed. But if your dad got in the way of a surfer, a male surfer on his board, you'd be in big trouble. And then, you got to law school. I think the percentages of guys to girls in the 80s was probably 60-40. And that has slowly become reversed to being 40-60, 50-50, 40-60. I just always felt more comfortable in a male environment. So being very sporty as well. I would play tennis with guys or squash with guys. And that's, I'd have a couple of close girlfriends that were similar to that. So that was our group. And I was able at a very young age to be very comfortable with older people. So even at the law firm, I would always tend towards the senior associates and the partners if you were away on a retreat or conferences and things like that, to just be able to speak over far different areas than you would with the younger generation. I suppose I was born older, like my dad, older than you really are.
You were raised with more mature conversations.
Yes.
Probably that way.
Yeah.
I think, as I said, I think being raised around more mature conversations probably led to that, and becoming more comfortable in all spaces is another key thing as growing up. And how do you see that language or understanding and that idea of resilience in different spaces reflective into the younger generation you are working with?
I find it really depends. The ones that I work with all ages, obviously, and the juniors that I need to help and mentor don't seem to have that international experience. And I also pin it back to education. I don't believe that the younger generation these days is getting the education that I grew up with. Yes, I had it in the home, but also every school I was lucky enough to be at taught you geography and history and religion and, yes, languages and literature and pure grammar. So you were an all-rounded person when you got to university, and university was then to help you, teach you to think and put that out into profession and society. It's far different, I believe. Nowadays, the pressure to just get your exams done and get the highest exam marks that you can get to then hit your university degree and then drift or find the profession that you want to be in. I quiz many about, didn't you learn geography or this or that? You're going on a trip and they cannot remember or they don't know anything. It's easy to find information at your fingertips. And even some of the brightest young lawyers that have come on through, if you ask them about something at school that they might have studied, they've forgotten it. They can't retain as well as they used to, I believe.
And then from there on, in your most careers in terms of the legal side of it, how have you evolved that practice, what you're working with in terms of the recruitment side of it and then getting to know more people?
So I was leaving the law and went to an agency, and this lady said, oh, well, why don't you run this desk? And that was recruitment of lawyers. And because we only had the one law school, I knew everybody. And you know, you knew them from when you may be doing your arts year or the year before, right up to fourth year. In our day, you did a Bachelor of Jurisprudence for 3 years. And that was the intention of the olden days of ladies might not want to go and become a lawyer, but to do 3 years of law was very good for them, just for their knowledge. And I only know one that only did the Bachelor of Jurisprudence, and she went to one of our best international law firms and was the best HR, human resources manager. But she first went into the firm as a legal librarian on the back of that Bachelor of Jurisprudence. But she was brilliant. And I see her to this very day now that she's retired. And I bring those older HR managers together that were in the law firms, which is a delight as well. But yeah, leaving the law and going to the agency, I did that and learnt a little bit. And then my ex-husband said, let's start up your own because you do it all, so let's do it. And it was just such a joy to see how many open doors there were from there. And the biggest joy, I think, became not just the law firms, it became the mining companies and the oil and gas companies, because it's good to have a lawyer being a recruiter in legal profession because you can understand all of the legal technology. But then for the oil and gas and the geology background that I grew up with and did a year of study, that was brilliant to be able to have relationships with the mining company MDs or their legal counsels, so your general counsels, and then be able to recruit to put people in the seat that were the best match, the best marriage for that company or that law firm. And I love it. I did the passion that I have for it, and just to marry people. I say to others, if they don't know much about recruitment, I don't work to be a bum on a seat. I work for longevity. And I think I let you know that I have come through the whole cycle of practitioners. So a junior lawyer comes to me after about 7 years or so, and they might change jobs, and then they might go in-house after being in a law firm because they don't want to do the timesheets anymore, and they want to be with just one company rather than a mixture of companies. And then they get older, they retire, and I have their sons and daughters, and it's just such a joy. And even as a baby lawyer, I was quite scared and was in fear of everybody, and loved going to court, but was just very nervous all the time.
From a line of within there are multiple verticals within the law you can practice, and what has been the most attractive for you, the line of work, and what kind of, if you want to share a bit more on one of the interesting cases you have worked on?
Yeah, look, when I was in the law, yes, the biggest case.
Or you're observed.
Observing.
Either ways.
I just love helping general counsels or the managing director or CEO find people that really build their company. And of course the lawyers come into the companies and are at the forefront of the deals. Obviously the CEO and the MD are doing their deals and then mergers and acquisitions that might be happening. But the lawyer has to have that commercial mind. So they must keep the black letter of law and focus on keeping that no matter what. It's been very interesting watching some that have been pushed to the edge of the grey area of law when it becomes too far across the border, and they then resign because they feel that it's obviously going to breach legal law. I love working with oil and gas companies because of where I came from and with my upbringing. And I love to see that I've been able to put someone into a role and that company has become so big or so important for an international company, say, not law firm, to come on in and buy that company. And then the person might then move off because then they've got international general counsels and more senior counsel that will be controlling them. But just to see that process is really exciting. One in particular was a lady who must have had a mixed family background, and she was very bright. So she would have done her university law at Melbourne University. Or Sydney, one of the better ones, ANU in those days, and Melbourne. And she worked with a couple of the very big international firms and then went to Indonesia. And I think that's what she must have married, someone that was working in Indonesia or living there. And when it was time for her to come back to Australia, because her name was different, many of the recruitment agencies or human resources managers of law firms and companies just never gave her a go. I met with her, loved her, and was able to introduce her to people and help them understand that, look, in Indonesia, she was working for the royal family and she was dealing in so many areas of law. Give the girl a go and see how she can perform for you. Finally, we found a company that did that, and she's never looked back. And she thanks me to this very day that I saved her coming back home to Australia. She usually, when you've been away or you haven't practiced law for a while, the Legal Practice Board and the College of Laws make you do a lot more study to get up to speed, and then you're supervised and so on. But she was able to even argue her way through and wrote all of her letters superbly, that she was able to go into this company without having some more senior lawyer supervising her. And her story just fills me with so much joy.
Oh. And you also have... you can talk about your style of parenting, and you have talked about, off the camera, talking about your family and your kids and the phenomenal stories you were sharing about them. I think, tell me more on, the style of parenting and, what worked and what didn't work, and how did you go with that?
Yeah, okay. So I and my husband, ex-husband, we were together until they were in their high school years, and we were very hands-on. His role had him away a lot from the actual hands-on daily life of bringing the children up. So I, through my mother, love cooking and love sharing different cuisine. And a nutritionist background because my mother was a nurse. So the children had wonderful meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner. We ate properly at the table every dinner, and no phones or anything like that people may have at the dinner table. Some don't even know how to use a knife and fork. I've taught my boys' friends who've come to stay at our house how to use a knife and fork, and their parents might be doctors, and you just are gobsmacked that can happen in life. So parenting, I've been very hands-on, but not too pushy. I didn't push them into being great swimmers, being great netball players, being great athletes. They fell into their roles and they did the best they could. And each of them were in the athletics team and the swimming teams. And music, I didn't really have music in my background, but we had the children doing piano at a very young age, and my daughter ended up doing trumpet, as she was called in quite early, I think far too early, to go into a symphony orchestra at the end of grade 5 at her private school. And so right up to year 12, she was symphony and jazz. I think she was doing 4 ensembles up to year 10, so she was doing chorale and barbershop singing as well. But she was all-rounded and did the sports. She was a prefect. She put her hand up to do everything. My boy, the same, put his hand up to do everything. He has dyslexia, and they picked that up at his private school in grade 2. And I was horrified that it took them that long. Other people say to me, oh, Juliana, they don't find it until grade 9 half the time. So I had to be there for the handover of teachers of every year in primary school because for some reason the handover just didn't happen of his label as dyslexia. And then he gets to senior school, grade 7. They would have a tutor every morning the whole year, the whole school cohort. So from year 7 to year 12, they would meet in the morning with their tutor. And my boy was lucky enough to have the most beautiful young tutor, I think Italian background, and she was the librarian at his school. And he was really just taken under everybody's wing, because he's such a beautifully brought up child, a beautiful boy that once again accepted all races and walked and talks and eats with all races. And he did brilliantly at the end of year 12. You would get, once you'd had all of the psychological testing and you put that through to the examination boards at school and at university, you would get 5 to 10 minutes extra for each hour for your exams. And he did better than my daughter did, and she was very academic. So not pushy, but on my husband's side, he brought them up as equals. We had them driving on our little poddy farm, when they were well before age. So at 9 or 10, they'd be able to get in the little Suzuki, and both of them were able to drive very early on a manual. And consequently, they've grown up to be great people, adults, very quickly and very comfortably, very happily, both engaged already and with great partners and great jobs. My boy did commerce and marketing economics, so he's in a marketing company. My daughter couldn't decide. She was so busy at school. I think she was quite burnt out for study. So she didn't go for the university line of things and decided that by the end of year 11, and saw in the career fairs that perhaps you could try the Defence Force. And her grandfather on her father's side was a wing commander and vice squadron leader from Perth, and he went straight to war and did brilliantly, and only just died a few years back at the age of 98. So there she was, thinking about Popper, and off she went to the Air Force. So she did the gap year, which was hard to get into. And both of my children left on their journeys before COVID hit. So she went January 2020 and became an aviation technician and can work a plane. And in the background has been going for the exams and the medicals and the psychology tests to become a pilot. So she's just starting pilot school now. And my boy left from finishing commerce at UWA to go to Taiwan for the year to learn Chinese because his lady has a Taiwanese background, but she's been in Australia for most of her life. And she's now a baby lawyer. I call them a baby lawyer when they're doing their graduate and the first, second year law. And they'll be married in next year, March next year. And my daughter, well, she's got to get through pilot school 2 years now. We'll probably get married in 2 years after that. Wow.
What a story. Considering all that background, you have covered fair sectors of the economy. What do you see in terms of the challenges facing as a country, in terms of the economic challenges to start with? What do you think are the biggest economic challenges right now? And what kind of economic reforms to bring it back?
Yeah, look, this I would love to go into politics one day because it's a beautifully big country with not the greatest leaders in the last decade, I would say. Or so. And my beef is how Western Australia is always not thought of if you are in the eastern states. And I really realized this when I would fly over to see my daughter in the Air Force. And people just don't know about Perth, and they don't know about Western Australia hardly at all. And Western Australia is so rich in its resources and the companies that are here that we really hold the country. And that's why there is so much angst about GST and royalties and is it fair? And coming from the energy resources background that I have come from, and being involved with all the law firms that create a lot of the work that is here, and see the companies doing their mining here and overseas, I feel that WA really does need far more recognition than it does get. On my ex-husband's line, there is the great-grandfather was a member of Parliament here in the early 1900s, mid to mid 1900s, Harry Shearn, and he was trying to have WA secede from the rest of Australia. So I tease people a lot these days saying that we should secede from the rest of Australia. Economy-wise, we have got to become a lot stronger, and we really have so much to work with. If we could grow up, I'm not sure whether that means becoming a republic or not, but the attitude that it's a lucky country, it's not a lucky country anymore unless we really work for it. We need to increase immigration. We need to be able to try and pull back, well, not pull back because we've never had the deserts. It's such a huge land that we need to be able to do more with the land. I spoke at asked questions at a couple of big conferences recently, and one was on security and obviously climate change, and how dangerous that becomes when other countries nearby are going to perhaps 1,000 years from now be underwater. And a lot of people don't understand that can really affect the security of your country. So we need to build our workforce, we need to build our defence force, we need to have open arms, but also to be careful as to what can come into the country and affect the country. And that is environmentally, obviously, we can't have anything come on in and infect our crops and our animals and so on, but also our people. We have a lot of drugs coming into the country now, and our border is just such an open border. Having a daughter in the Defence Force, I'm far more aware of how insecure the country is in that regard. And yes, that costs a lot of money. A lot of money needs to be put up there. We have very dangerous countries around us. We are like a sitting duck in the middle of a lot of countries that could fire up. And we have always relied on America to save us. Now that we've got someone leading America that is quite flighty in his opinions and really quite dangerous himself, we need to be able to stand up on our own, I think, from now onwards. And I raised this question for that climate security discussion. We had an admiral speaking who'd been an admiral. He was in the Navy for 40 years or so. And I asked the question, which was obviously me talking for a bit until Kate Cheney said, is there a question in this, Juliana? And I brought it all around into being, okay, let's have a think about national security and making people do national service for a year or so. And everyone started to speak up about that from there onwards, saying, you can't make people do it. But it is an idea as to help our workforce. And if you incentivize it, for example, cutting off a HECS debt if you're going and doing your national service, reducing rental or finding housing for young people. Why I bring this in is that I see a lot of young people without jobs, a lot of young people lost, not knowing what to do with their lives. apathetic, perhaps, in some regard.
Can I just bump in on that national service? In the UK, in the last election, the Conservative Party ran with that as one of the policy program. Yes, as you know, they lost. But one of the, as you said, everybody got up and then had an angst. You can't force people to do national service. But what the policy in the UK, what they were suggesting was that either you do national service in the form of working with the defense forces or you do voluntary work.
Yes.
So you do voluntary work with aged care, all those sectors. So you are using that period in your life when you are just out of university or having some time off here to use that to get new skills, as you said. And I don't know, the reason of them losing was not just this policy, but there were other reasons to lose. But how do you see?
I think it's a great idea. I think, I use the example of my two children. My boy at his school, I think there's only a couple of schools in their high school years. He did cadets. So he did cadets from year 10 to year 12. And I thought he would be the one that would go into the Defence Force, but it was the daughter behind the scenes watching him at the school next door. And I have never had to, well, not never, but I have not had to iron their shirts, make their beds, polish their shoes. They can really fend for themselves, and they've been able to fend for themselves at a high school age. And I've been horrified over the years to see how many parents still do everything for their university students, and the kids are still living at home. I know that housing is an issue, and many of these families are quite wealthy, and the children really don't need to be at home. I think national service shouldn't be enforced. For example, I've had a lawyer through all my years of working, and he was from Singapore, and he had come to perhaps university here. I don't know what happened, but he didn't do his national service in Singapore. The 2 years I think they had to do. And over the years of working with him, I got him into various roles here in Perth, and he then wanted to be closer to Southeast Asia. He was not able to go back to Singapore until he turned 40. So if he had gone back before he turned 40, he would have to do his 2 years national service no matter what. So I think we had him in Hong Kong, and then he wanted to get closer and closer to Singapore. And finally, he emails me and says, "I'm 40, I can go back to Singapore now," which was a delight. So yeah, that sort of thing can be hard. And I don't think everyone's suited for the forces, but I just believe there's going to be far more people without a job. And this is a good start to try and round them into life rather than just education and academia.
And the other challenge, as you reflected upon from a country point of view, I want your political views as you said, you want to go in politics, or you might land up in politics. How do you see how do we solve the problem on the housing side of it, the increasing the affordability of housing, whether it's to buy a house or to afford rental? I think Western Australia is one of the most unaffordable in terms of rental housing across the country. So how do you see that problem to be managed?
Look, it's a tough one, and it's a tough one for any political party you cannot solve it. We've been at the end of COVID, and during COVID, Western Australia in particular was closed door to the world and to Australia. The borders were closed. And that goes back to the workforce and immigration. You didn't have the builders to build the houses. You didn't have enough people there. And then the backlog of building got worse and worse. And the boom of building became extreme. We now have many building companies going into liquidation. And that's also because we don't have enough immigration happening to put the workforce in. So it's it's a minefield of trying to solve a problem that has just been snowballing for quite a while. I think we have a huge urban sprawl that has become a coastal sprawl of building houses, everybody wanting to have their own land, everyone having their big house, their swimming pool, and against high-rise living. I think we have to change that. We have to make high-rise living more comfortable, and we also need the quality of the build to be solid, and not throwing things out there as fast as we can to find that, you know, cladding may be inflammable and the construction getting cracks in the walls and flooding and all sorts of things. So it's a very big question. It's a very hard one to answer. Slowly but surely, I think we need a bigger workforce.
On the other side, when we talked about, you know, compulsory national service, when, you know, people say no, we don't want to, but on the other side, we argue for compulsory voting. So naturally, we have landed onto, you know, 85-87% of the population votes every time. Naturally, people are habituated to vote, and all democracies who are not having compulsory voting, they range between 80-90% of the people who have who can vote are voting. So how is those two scenarios different when you are not forcing people to vote, but still more than majority, 80% plus people are involved in the democratic process, versus when you are enforcing compulsory voting?
As compared to national service.
Yeah, so when people say no, it should not be compulsory, most majority of the people.
Well, I think national service is controlling people's life.
Whereas voting is not.
Well, they have to take a moment out of their time on a Saturday to go and vote. Other democracies get along, and other countries get along without forcing them.
So why is that apathy of, you know, staying away from the idea of politics or being involved in, or we have to force people? It has to be compulsory. You have to be penalized for you to vote.
I suppose we've just.
How is that evolution?
It's just grown that way. You know, we know nothing else. We are a colony. We are from the royal family in England, in the UK, and we haven't changed that way. We're predominantly a democratic society, and
if more than for a century, if we have, as in for a good long time, we have put it compulsory, so we are trained now to naturally go and vote. So which means if you lift the veil of not having compulsory, I think people will go up and because
still do it.
Because they're already up there.
Yeah.
So if you have, for example, 40% of the people voting naturally, then you say, no, I need more people. Let's do compulsory. Let's push this number up. 60%, 70%, 85%. Now we're already there. So there is no need, because people are habituated to be involved and, you know, doing votes.
I think that apathy is a big problem in the country. So if we took it away, it could reduce right back down again. Talking about the masses, there are a lot of people out there that are apathetic and uneducated, and they become racist because they don't empower themselves. And then poverty becomes a big thing too, because they aren't getting out there and getting their jobs. They want the country to feed them. They want help, but won't do anything about it. It's dangerous, I think.
And why? What's the use case, or what's the case to argue why majority of the country should be involved in the political process, not once every 3 or 4 years, but a bit more engaged at the local level? They don't need to listen to the PMQ or Senate estimates. They don't need to spend that much time, but at least some level of ground involvement.
I think it's for the better good of the individual, as well as for the country itself. If you don't all join together and try and address issues and complaints and problems and grow together, what do you have? Anarchy. You really, I think people want the better good for the most of society. We would hope that.
And I also observed that most of the political messaging during the campaigns, they are too oversimplified, just to hit the message and repeat the message again and again, without an assumption that if you sit down and explain your argument, how much ever complex the idea is, you'll be able to tell people that's the argument, and you assume agency from your citizens, that they will understand what I'm trying to argue, and I might be arguing a difficult scenario, but I will tell you my story, the reasons, but I don't want, when I oversimplify it, it doesn't go well.
Well, I find as we're in the thick of it, we've had a state election and now the national election. Too many times you have each party arguing against each other, pulling each other down, insulting each other, and not putting up their policies for the country for the better good of each person. They infight and they abuse and accuse each other. And that is where I think a lot of the population really turns themselves off on politics and really can't care less who takes over, because they feel that they are useless and nothing can be done to change. The parties are very similar to themselves once they've got in. And I find that if you got into politics, could you ever change it? I don't know if you could. To put your philosophies forward for the better good of people and to listen to people and put it out there without trying to shred the other party. It's human beings.
And the other idea that, politicians have to be picture perfect all the time. They won't, if they make mistakes, they'll be pushed down. So I think we should also expect from politicians to learn on the journey. I might think differently after 10 years than today. That's my evolution, because I now have more knowledge and evidence. I should think that way. So changing opinions should be okay in the political arena, because now I know more. And you and I, we are very different what we were 10 years ago and years ago. So evolution should be normalized. Changing opinions should be normalized. I should not stand by one decision of mine and, I will die on that hill.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes for many things in life. Domestic violence, violence to women, politics, everything. You have to take it all the way back to education at a very young age. So if education is not happening in a household that has that violence that might be in it, it's the schooling. And I believe, like the Scandinavian countries, we need to be paying teachers far more money than that they get at this very day and age. And I wanted to become a teacher, but that wasn't good enough in my parents' eyes, because it just wasn't, prestigious or money, I don't know. But they really should be the top earners of our country if you want your youth to become great people, good people, solid people. I believe that most changes start in the crib, even in the womb. That's hard too. So our poor country, we need a lot of money to look after our children, our teachers. Our medical health is pretty good here in this country. Our aged care, our defence force. And I've always said we waste a lot of money on things like Australia Day, where you're going to have all of these fireworks, or New Year's Eve, where you have fireworks, and then every suburb goes and has fireworks, and it's millions of dollars spent on wasted issues for fun that is not helping the country at all.
Taking it from there further, in terms of, you said the education at the school level at a younger age, what do you see, teaching civics as part of understanding the political process, coming back to there? How is embedding that as part of a natural conversation, and then, how is that a solution?
I think politics is not really taught at schools until they're in their high school years. If you start introducing far more issues in primary school, which I was privy to because I grew up in an international school overseas, and then was lucky enough to have old school teachers when I was here in Australia. I think you develop a child's mind, even if they may come from the worst background, and in poverty. If you can challenge a child and develop a child's mind, if it's willing to and healthy enough to, you're always going to have a better good in the community. And if you've got teachers that they're well paid, they're not overworked. The same in our medical environments, that not overworked, not dragged through hours and hours. I think you're going to have a better society if you can start at a younger age. My children went to daycare at 6 months of age, and they are fine, great people. They haven't been hurt because of that. I was lucky enough, I suppose, to be able to fund a very good daycare that was built on an Italian philosopher's studying of introducing a lot to a baby even, and everything, cuisine and arts and speech and athletics and physical education, music. And then going into school with all of that.
What do you think in the coming years or decades, things you think should be changed for, again, greater good for the individual and the country? What are the core principles or core things to be, rejigged?
Rejigged, yes. Well, realigned. I think we must do the best we can with our Indigenous peoples. We must encourage Australians to have an open mind to all walks of life, and to try and put their feet in another person's shoe and try to understand where they've come from, if they have come from other countries. I believe we must look after our children. We must look after our aged people. Many in society, in this Western society, don't believe or aren't able to look after their older people in the home, and they send them into care. Our aged care workers are some of the poorest earners in the country, and the same for childcare. We need to be putting more money into these areas. My belief in that for the aged care is that we have the best wisdom in old people. We learn from old people. The young ones need to go and see the old ones to learn more. In many other countries, they are all in the home together, and the mother and father are out working. The older generation are looking after the younger generation and teaching them. We need to make sure we keep our medical history and medical industry thriving. Medicare is great, and we need to make sure that that does not leave us, increase as much as we can. We need to obviously grow the education for people to become medical practitioners. We need to grow trades. We need to encourage people to try various industries if they can. I think we also need to increase our defence as well, and understand climate change in that regard, how that can create fear throughout the land, and fear is a very dangerous aspect. Therefore, you create racism, and it's best that we don't have those sorts of issues coming up through various political parties that really try and encourage or blow it out of all proportion.
Thank you for your time today.